let's talk about WhatsApp. WhatsApp, I'm sure most of our listeners know, it's a encrypted messenger brought to you from Meta, the same people who make Facebook and Instagram. And WhatsApp, as far as we know, is end-to-end encrypted, and it uses the Signal protocol. So there are a lot of concerns about the metadata collection of WhatsApp, but up until now, we've always believed, well, the content itself is encrypted, which is better than nothing. Although there is now a new lawsuit that alleges that no, actually, that's not the case. And they don't mean that in like a, well, technically, kind of, sort of, like they mean it literally. Like, no, it is not end-to-end encrypted. And this lawsuit claims that if you are a Meta or WhatsApp employee, all you need to do to access the messages is you send a task, which is, I guess, just what they call like their internal tickets or requests in Meta's internal systems. And you just say, hey, I need access to these users' messages for whatever reason. And they say that the engineering team will then grant access, often without any scrutiny at all. And the worker's workstation will then have a new window or widget that they can pull up any WhatsApp user's messages based on the user's ID number. And then once they have the access, you can read messages. They say there's no separate decryption step. It's just available right there. They say that these messages are commingled with additional messages from unencrypted sources. Not entirely sure what that means. Maybe they're talking about the DMA. I think WhatsApp now has to federate or combine with other third-party messengers as part of the DMA, but I could be wrong about that. I'm speculating. They also say messages appear almost as soon as they are communicated, so this is essentially a real-time tool. And they say the access is unlimited, and you are able to go back indefinitely in time to view messages all the way back to the user's first messages when they open the account, including messages the users believe they have deleted. It is important to note that this lawsuit does not provide any technical details to back up these claims. They say that there were some courageous whistleblowers. I mean, obviously, Meta is disputing this. They say that these claims are, quote, categorically false and absurd. And they even say WhatsApp has been end encrypted using the Signal protocol for a decade. This is definitely a big, if true, kind of moment. And it's very concerning because WhatsApp is incredibly popular around the world. Here in the US, not so much, but in other parts of the world, in Europe and Asia, it's incredibly popular. And again, up until now, I want to reiterate, we have concerns with WhatsApp. I'm not saying it's great and you should use it, but at least it was like, well, at least the messages themselves are encrypted, and that's something. That's more than we can say for SMS or anything like that. And apparently we can't even say that now, potentially. The only other thought I wanted to point out is I mentioned the whole widget thing where they say there's no separate decryption step. In theory, that doesn't necessarily mean the messages aren't encrypted because maybe the decryption is happening within the widget. However, the whole point of end-to-end encryption is that that shouldn't be possible regardless. The whole point of end-to-end encryption is that the only people who should have access are the ends. And the server is not supposed to be one of those ends, cough, cough, zoom. Sorry, I had to take a shot at them for that one. Like I said, this really is like big if true and would really be bad because of WhatsApp's really large user base.
I think that's a really good point you just said about how the server shouldn't be one of the ends, especially because we know with WhatsApp in particular, but also with some other end-to-end encrypted messengers, most notably iMessage, unless you have advanced data protection enabled, even if end-to-end encryption is working perfectly fine, very often they will have these backup features which are not end-to-end encrypted, and that potentially acts as a backdoor for service providers to get into it. As far as I know, that is the case with WhatsApp, and that is a potential way that this could be true without the end-to-end encryption of the transmission itself being broken. Maybe they have a way to access these backups easily, but again, that's speculation. I think it's important to remember with this story, and actually, one of our community members just left a comment about this as well, which is that this is a legal complaint right now. It's not at the stage where any evidence has been presented at all. There's no technical evidence within the document that's been shared that demonstrates any sort of backdoor or that there's any sort of compromise with the encryption of WhatsApp. That being said, with an app like WhatsApp that's closed source and completely under the control of Facebook, this is always a danger, especially because Facebook has this history of, extensive metadata collection, extensive just general data collection, actually. And they are a company that's built entirely on this like data-driven advertising model where collecting as much data as they can is really paramount to their business. That creates a situation where it's very hard to trust that they've implemented end-to-end encryption correctly, that they're not trying to weaken it behind the scenes, or that this is completely impossible. So I don't think that this is out of the question. But again, this hasn't been proven. This just goes to show, I think, that encryption in these apps needs to be completely verifiable. It needs to be open source. It needs to use standard protocols, and it can't just be a matter of trust in the publisher of these apps themselves. Compared to a messenger like Signal, which is open source, like if this story had come out about Signal right now, many people, security experts, auditors could be poring over that source code trying to see if there's any way that this could be true, right? And that just isn't possible with WhatsApp. And that's the danger of using these proprietary closed source applications like this for your communications instead of more secure alternatives. The other thing I wanted to say about this whole WhatsApp story is that even if this isn't true, even if they can't read your messages themselves, it's well known at this point that WhatsApp is not doing anything in terms of preventing the collection of metadata, which is data about who you're talking with, data about when you're using the app, all of that stuff that's not like the message content itself, right? There's this famous quote from a US government official where he goes like, "We kill people based on metadata," right? Because they don't actually need the content of your messages. If people have access to this data, they can infer a lot about you. Who you talk to says a lot about what you're probably talking about, especially if you're doing it on a regular basis or anything like that. And all of that can be determined without breaking end-to-end encryption at all. And that's part of why I think WhatsApp is such a dangerous application to use, because none of that metadata is protected. And Facebook is the last company on earth who I would trust with that metadata in question. So even if it's not true, I would really encourage people to not use WhatsApp personally. But if it is true, that is even worse. We will have to keep an eye on this story for sure, because it is a big, if true moment. Absolutely.
I will be really interested to see what sort of evidence they present, if any. The EFF has an amazing page where they talk about the importance of metadata, and they use some examples, like some really sensitive examples, like if you call the suicide hotline at, sorry, probably just got us demonetized, but you call the hotline at 2 a.m. from the Golden Gate Bridge. Do you really need the contents of the phone call to know what was probably going on there? And yeah, I forget who it was that said that quote, but that is a really famous quote you can find very easily with a web search. And that's what he was saying, is exactly that. Like, metadata is so revealing that you can make a really convincing argument without the content. And at that point, you can authorize a military strike.
It's good enough for most people, I think. So
For sure.
before we move on really quick, we did get a question. How do you convince your peers to stop using WhatsApp? Do you have any thoughts on that, Nate?
Send them this story. I think, we get questions like this all the time, and they're great questions, but unfortunately there is no one size fits all answer. If we had the one secret answer that could get people to take their privacy seriously, we would have used it by now. But I think I'm thinking particularly in the context of like Europeans and Asians, like people where WhatsApp is like a common way to connect with businesses and stuff like that. And I think for those people, instead of trying to get people off WhatsApp, trying to get them onto something else, in the sense that, like, you can keep WhatsApp and you can use it for, when you have to contact a business in Germany or something, but all your friends are also on Signal, and we could use that too. I have had amazing success by focusing on features. Like, I hate to say it, but let's be honest, most people don't care about privacy and security enough that that's their driving factor to move. It's just kind of a happy bonus. My wife used to be a wizard at this, and I swear to God, she should teach a class. She was so good at getting people to switch to Signal, and she never brought up privacy and security. Like, she'd mention, like, yeah, it's this encrypted messenger, but like, it's got, bigger attachment sizes. And we're comparing to SMS here, so I don't know how it compares to WhatsApp, but like, it's got bigger attachment sizes. We can send GIFs, we can send reactions, because this is before RCS was a thing. It's like all these amazing quality of life features. And I swear to God, 5 minutes later, I would get a text from the person she was talking to, like, hey, I'm on Signal now. I'm like, damn, I've been trying to get this person on Signal for 2 years. How did you do this?
I totally agree. You kind of stole the thing that I wanted to talk about, so I won't spend too long on it. But I mean, that is definitely, I truly believe that, like, all of these private alternatives, pretty much in most of these sectors, if you really look at them and if you really start to use them, they are also quality of life improvements. Because I think people are fed up with technology and all of this surveillance and all of these anti features that like all of our computers are doing things that we didn't ask them to do now, or AI is being jammed into them, or that it's popping up. It was annoying, decades ago in Microsoft Word with Clippy, and Copilot is just as annoying now in all of those products. People just want functional tools, I think, and focusing on that aspect. I think that's probably the best way to drive adoption of these things, because it's simpler, it's more reliable, and it works better in my experience. And finding ways that it works better than WhatsApp and focusing on that rather than trying to compare like the security features that they already have, like you said, I think that is the way to go.